Welcome to episode 126 of the Horror Podcast. My name's Tyler, and by day, I'm just an ordinary teacher. But by night, I transform to an ordinary teacher who likes to talk about spooky shit. So I am joined tonight, as I am most nights, by the co-hostess with the mostest, the sassiest skeleton I know, Orrin Gray. What's going on, Orrin? What have you been up to since we chatted last?
I don't even know. I honestly don't even know. Like I was on another, like I was a guest on another podcast where I got interviewed recently. It hasn't gone live yet, I don't think, but I swear to God, like every answer to every question was just going like fucking COVID, man. Fucking
yeah,
COVID.
Right.
I don't even know. Like, yeah, I don't know anything anymore.
Well, what was the podcast? Let's give them a shout out.
It's Legends of Tabletop.
Oh shit, that's very fitting.
Yeah,
very fitting. Especially
I've been on there a couple times before, so it's good times. Yeah,
you've got the cred for all that shit, so I'm not remotely surprised by that. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We are going to discuss what we've been reading and watching. We're going to highlight some free content on the internet with our dark corner of the web. And then finally, we're going to buy ourselves a ticket for the famous or infamous Paris Hilton vehicle, the 2005 film House of Wax. But before we get there, Orrin, come on, what kind of content have you been consuming?
So I've actually got some this time. It's not going to just be me going, I don't know, whatever. I don't know, fucking COVID, man. No, so I read the new Junji Ito. It's called Censor. It like literally just came out this week, I want to say.
All right.
And so I finally read it. Like I got it earlier in the week, and I read it some evening. And it was one of those things where I was going to read it like over a course of several days, and I read the whole thing.
Of course, as one does with Junji Ito, you know.
Yeah, and it's Junji Ito, so it's great, of course.
I think if people are following you on Twitter, then they maybe have seen some of the cells of the latest.
Right, yes, a preview image of what they can expect from this. But again, like if someone's following me on Twitter and they don't know what to expect from Junji Ito at this point, like.
Truth.
They haven't been following very long, probably.
But it's so cool. Like that shit is.
I love that shit.
Yeah, it really is something.
And no one else does it like him. Like it's a very special thing.
I've tried to describe his stuff to like non-horror people, right? Mm-hmm. And my anime kids, right? If they don't know him already, immediately fall in love with it because I think it's such a very specific art form. And if you have like some experience or already an affinity to that kind of stuff, then I think it's right up your alley. Anybody else, they're fucked. I'm like, I'm like, you won't get it. It's okay. Like it probably isn't for you. Yeah, that's okay.
And it's like one of those things where like I think his stuff is really hard to adapt. Like there's been a few things that adapted his stuff. And I think part of why it's hard to adapt is because he does this thing, right? And I posted that picture and that picture is ridiculous. But like he does this thing where like one panel is still shocking even when you keep looking at it, like which is so hard to do. You can't just recreate that image again. Like there's something about how he draws it and everything that like it really nails that kind of like that monumental horror image kind of thing where like you can stare at it forever and it stays scary.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah, it stays unsettling,
right,
like it. Yeah. Something that's kind of eternally spooky or something. Yeah. No, I like it. Well, I know that we have some regulars that love to listen to the program. If you would like to comment and follow along, feel free. We use StreamYard, which is a product that helps us come to you on many different platforms. But all you got to do is just comment in the comment section. And as long as you've walked through that process, then we can throw your question or comment up here and you can join the conversation of the Horror Pod class. So we'd love to hear from you. It's way more fun when there's lots of class participation. So.
Right. Yes.
Okay. My list of shit is very long this week. Okay. I don't know why. Maybe I've just been really busy since, last we met a couple weeks ago. But first on that list, on my TBR for like what feels like decades, is Jimophile's book, right? Experimental film.
Oh,
which,
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome, right? And everybody I talked to was like, it's incredible, it's really great. And Jim was on the show last year, and I was like, okay, it's time, right? And as much as people hyped it up, it's better, right? Like it is great. So good. And I've really become a sucker for that kind of elder god or that lesser god that just kind of wants to come back in and regain some power, and her creation of that particular entity is so brilliant. I think she writes the relationship between like moms and dads and their kids, I think, is really complex, and she captures that sense that the failure that we may see in our kids is really our own failure. And that's what bothers us the most is just so heartfelt and wonderful. So I cannot mention enough. I see Leland here. It's been on his TBR. It 100% needs to be at the top because it's so good. So good.
It's so good. And like it spent, and I don't know what it is about it. It spent a long time on my TBR before I finally got to it too. So it happens, but no, it's super good.
Yeah, and well worth the read. I also got to attend a critic screening of The Night House, which is, I thought, really very good. I gave it a positive, ultimately a positive review. It's got a little bit of like cosmic horror, some grief horror. It's got a really badass statue that I think everybody's seen in the trailer, but it's well worth a watch. I didn't love the ending, and there's some other kind of problem.
Some other people saying that,
Yeah, I mean, you can take it or leave it. I think what it is really working hard to do is give a sense of ambiguity, which is cool. I like that kind of shit. But by doing that, it kind of makes this foray into some not so great stuff, maybe about mental illness that, I don't know, probably needs a little bit more time to percolate or unpack. I still liked it. It is well worth the watch. Go see it in a theater because above all, it's monster, and this isn't really a spoiler warning because you see some of it in the trailer. It is made out of like a tableau, right? It is made out of like the peripheral of other objects, essentially. So it's made out of the space of other things, which made it super sinister, but also as a metaphor for loss, which the whole movie certainly is, really works. So, but like I watched some of the movie like this, like it's got great scares. So totally. Yeah.
It's in the trailer yet. So,
well, maybe go in fresh. Yeah. I'd love to hear your take. It's out in theaters tomorrow. So totally go check it out. It's super worth it. And the last thing that I want to mention, actually, real quick, I saw Gigi Saul Guerrero, who is a horror director, but she is in a new film called The Funhouse. Got an early screener for that. Not my favorite. It's a little maybe too torture porny for it. Feels like a movie made in like 2000, right, instead of 2020.
But so fun, right in the name,
right? It isn't, just spoiler alert, not a ton of fun.
Not a lot of fun.
No, but like I'm sure it is for some people. Some people will see this movie and will be like, oh, it's people trapped in a house and they have to kill each other and like do these fucked up contests. That's my jam. In which case, more power to you. It will be perfect for you. It was not perfect for me, and that's okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But go ahead. I've talked a lot.
No, I was going to say I also saw it's not terribly recent, but it is kind of relevant in that it is on Shudder right now. I saw Angst, which is a movie from 1983, which is very, very good and super fucking intense. So, and it's like it's a pretty, like, it would be a pretty standard like home invasion-y type movie. We didn't really have home invasion movies yet in '83, but like that kind of thing. But like the way it's filmed, the camera work is so much a character in the movie that like it really just changes the tone of the film in a really interesting way. So yeah, check out Angst. It's on Shudder. It's like 83 minutes. So
short runtime, quickest way to my heart. Orrin knows what's up.
Yeah.
Okay, so the thing that has been on my I have watched over the summer list now for 2 weeks in a row, which I absolutely adored, was season 2 of Black Summer. So Black Summer is a zombie serial. Okay. It's a zombie miniseries. What I like, I think when I reviewed season 1, what I said about it was it's got interesting storytelling devices. The bottle episodes for me worked way better than the kind of linear shit did. Mm-hmm. And season 2, I will tell you, is probably the best season of any horror serial I have ever seen. It is unbelievably intense, and it's like they just eschewed all of the way they used to tell stories, and now you get essentially the same, I don't know, the same 2 hours in the first 5 episodes told over 5 hours. So essentially it gives you a multitude of different perspectives, and they all start at a different part of the inciting incident. Okay. So it is just fantastic, and the best thing I've seen in a really, really long time. So
what is it on? Is it on?
It's on Netflix. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's a show that was made specifically for it, which is crazy. But yeah, it's almost so caught up in its storytelling. You're like, how did this get made? Because it's got action, but there is no like. There's not a plot really. Like, it's just like, here is a major incident that happens. Here's how everybody deals with it. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's just, again, I'm a sucker for kind of a family oriented horror film, or at least one that discusses that. And it's all about that shit. So Black Summer season 2 on Netflix, go check it out and then tell us what you think. Cause it really is fantastic.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, well, that brings us to tonight's Dark Corner of the Web, which is the second to last Nightmare Junkhead episode. Let me tell you a little bit about Nightmare Junkhead. They're Kansas City guys, which makes, it makes it really easy for us to hang out and to, see them around town. But they have so much fun with their episode about Prom Night 2. That I want to be in the room with them. I want to have a couple of beers. I want they have so much fun. They're so knowledgeable. They're just great dudes, So
and Prom Night 2 is just great anyway.
Yeah.
I love Prom Night 2.
Yeah, so if you have not checked out Nightmare Junkhead, they have a great time. They're great dudes. You absolutely should, but pay particular attention to this Prom Night 2 stuff, which is the movie's great, but they make it even better if that's possible. So Leland says Black Summer may be a little bit like World War Z without the kind of World War aspect. Yeah, but think like a much tighter story. Think one of the stories that's presented in Max Brooks' World War Z, but told from 6 different perspectives. So like, not just that we have different stories going on, and it is, I can't.
Zombie Rashomon, yeah.
Yes, it 100% has that feel. That's a great comparison too. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, it's time. I think.
All right, yeah, I'm here for this.
We're all ready. Let's do it. Okay. Tonight's essential question, which we will do a terrible job of answering. Just prepare yourself.
We will just ignore the entire episode. The question. It's good.
Right. No. Yes. Our overly developed transition, because that's really all it is. Our essential question tonight is, Can the 2005 House of Wax remake teach us why wax figures are just so goddamn scary? And before we get into our little plot here and everything else, let's take a look for the trailer for the House of Wax. And this is a trailer from the Blu-ray release, which is a fantastic release that I bet Orrin will have a lot to talk to us about in just a second. So here's House of Wax. Sometime soon.
You guys gonna do it tonight or what?
Stop!
The hell is that?
What does he want?
Can we help you?
Well, maybe we're on his property.
I mean, turn your lights off.
That guy was a freak.
So let's get out of here. All right, let's go.
Come on, he's gone. You see anybody?
No, nobody.
Hello?
I don't think anyone's here. Hey, where's that House of Wax? It is wax. Literally.
This is weird.
Looks like a hell of a party. Look how detailed this is. Tell me this doesn't look real. You're saying that that's a real person underneath?
They're all wax, everyone. Help! Please, somebody! They're out there. You gotta be careful.
I am being careful.
Okay, so I'll give you the real brief summary here, and then I'm going to throw it to you, and you're going to tell me, Orrin, why we're talking about House of Wax tonight, okay? So the Internet Movie Database gives us a real brief summary, which is a group of teens are unwittingly stranded near a strange wax museum and soon must fight to survive and keep from becoming the next exhibit. So why the House of Wax?
I fucking love this movie. This movie is great. This movie is legit great. And I did not expect to love it because it is made up almost entirely of things I hate. Except for wax museums, which I love. I love all wax museums and all wax museum movies. All of them are great forever. But it's like early 2000s backwoods slasher bullshit, right? Like Rob Zombie, by way of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all that kind of shit. And that's not my jam at all. It's very, it's body horror in the way of people getting their tendons cut and their thumbs snipped off and their lips taped together and torture porn shit. And I hate that too. And yet it all works and I love it and it's gorgeous and it looks like this crazy, I don't know, almost two-strip Technicolor lighting, this very green and gold lighting. It's got this kind of Italian type gore. The gore looks like rancid Lucio Fulci gore. It's
totally
so fucking good. It's so good. I love this movie so much. And I said on Twitter after I watched it this most recent time, I'm not sure there has ever been a better set ever constructed than that fucking town. I love that town.
Oh, yeah.
The whole town. That whole town is amazing.
Well, I can remember before, in 2005, I wasn't that into film. I certainly didn't think I was on a podcast or anything like that. And I can remember thinking then, like, this feels like a backlot, before all of that happened, like before you found anything out about it. Right. And I think they're like, fuck yeah, it does. Let's go with it.
Yeah. And there's like the house that's actually made of wax, which is such a great and you get the big ridiculous conflagration at the end as it melts, which is gorgeous.
Yes.
I love this fucking stupid movie.
Yeah.
It's not even actually that stupid. Like, it seems stupid because it's like an early 2000s slasher essentially, right? And they were all stupid, but they weren't all, right? They just all seemed like they were because they were glossy.
Right.
They were glossy and they had like teen stars in them, right? And so they seemed stupid. Or rather, they had like 30-year-olds pretending to be teen stars, right? Like, or some mix of the two. But it's this movie's not actually that stupid. It's it's a lot smarter than it should be, probably.
Yeah.
Given that we're like 5 movies into the Dark Castle franchise at this point. And this is a remake in name only of House of Wax, and it's whatever.
Yeah, no, I think really you're right in that it is a fun movie, right? And I think the difference between some of those early slashers is like House of Wax wants to have fun. Like, this movie knows what it is, and it's like, fuck it, we're gonna spend 90% of our budget on these like wax house scenes at the end, and we're gonna have a fucking fun time. Right. Some of those other movies took themselves super serious, and I feel stupid saying this because honestly, so Jean Collet-Serra, I'm probably butchering his name, but he's the director, right? And this was basically his debut feature for all intents and purposes. I think he'd made like one other thing before this. And he made this, and then he made Orphan. And Orphan, its plot has some fucking problems, but Orphan is like a really tight, well-constructed movie. And like, the dude felt like he was going to make something really like great, right, in horror, and then he made like a bunch of Taken alikes. That's essentially been his entire career since then. He made The Shallows, which was pretty decent horror actually. Like, it was okay.
The Shallows is a solid flick too. But like all the rest of his movies have been like these weird Liam Neeson vehicles that are basically just like, what if Taken but on a train?
Yeah.
What if Taken but with a snowplow or whatever? I don't think that was him.
Right.
But like,
no, God, I hope not. That thing was garbage. It was like Ice Road Taken. Yeah, that thing was not good.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, but like, and then Jungle Cruise, which I haven't seen, but I have not heard encouraging things. But like, man, like this like 1-2 punch of House of Wax and Orphan are like their plots are pedestrian for the most part, but man, like the filmmaking is actually visionary. These movies are gorgeous looking.
Yeah.
And they're put together really well, and like the shots are really good. They do not get the credit they deserve. Yeah,
no, and I think you're right. I think you can draw a straight line from House of Wax to Jungle Cruise, which I haven't even seen, but my guess is it leans heavy into the silly. It leans heavy into the whimsy, and those are all things that I think we can see the roots of in House of Wax, like all of those things. And I might also make the argument, like, dude's got a thing for like teen stars trying to branch out, right? Because The Shallows has I think she was in Gossip Girl. I'm gonna blank on her name. The lead of that is a former teen star, and this movie is rife with them. So
and I mean, and in The Shallows, like, it's essentially a one-woman show, right?
Right.
Like, she's basically by herself for the entire movie. Like, it's basically just all her show.
Yeah, and she's good.
Yeah,
and
she's great.
Yeah,
but the actors in this are good.
Ish.
I mean, they're all fine. There's nothing wrong with any of them. Like okay, so like the Paris Hilton's boyfriend has nothing to do. Like he has nothing to do
except have sex with her, right?
But there's nothing wrong with him. Like his performance is fine. When you have 3 lines in the entire movie, I mean, how much, I mean, really. And Paris Hilton is fine. And again, she has very little to do. But she seems like okay, so Paris Hilton is playing like Alicia Cuthbert's, because Alicia Cuthbert is our final girl, right?
Right.
Obviously from, it's not even a spoiler, obviously from frame 1, Alicia Cuthbert is our final girl. And Paris Hilton is her slutty friend, right? Because every final girl has a slutty friend. This is the final girl formula, as writ large as it could possibly be. Except that unlike most of those situations, they actually seem like friends.
Yeah. Well, and like, here's the thing. Paris Hilton is game, right? Like, she's not phoning this shit in. She is taking this very serious. And like, there is a lot of criticism of her in this movie out there, right? You can just see it. Yeah. And like, yes, I think it is clearly a publicity grab because this is prime Paris Hilton time.
Right.
But like, I've watched a lot of bad horror movies in my day, and she's okay. Like,
she's fine. There's nothing wrong. Like, she doesn't have much to do in this, but she's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so like you made a note in the show notes, like Paris Hilton is fine, and I went through, because everyone's going to see the show notes besides only you are going to see the show notes, but I went through and like struck through it and said fixed it for you. Like, Paris Hilton is fine, full stop. Like, Paris Hilton is not a bad actress. She gets a lot of guff, but I have literally never seen her turn in a performance that was not perfectly adequate.
Yeah, if I'm being fair,
she's not a great actress, but she's never been anything but perfectly fine.
Yeah,
that I've seen.
And I think if she does have a bad reputation, or if she's become kind of the butt of everybody's pop culture jokes, it wouldn't necessarily be for her acting. It would be more for like her stint in like reality TV and
right. And honestly, like the thing is, because I remember when this came out, and I remember everybody hating Paris Hilton, and I remember me hating Paris Hilton, right?
Right, me too.
It was manufactured. It was manufactured. Like, she was just she was a celebrity that we made out of nothing, right? Her entire fame was based on the fact that she was rich. That was it.
Well, right? She made the sex tape. I think those two things went
but she was already famous by the time she made the sex tape. Like, she was just rich, right? She was rich, and she was all the things that we wanted to hate, right? She was rich. We perceived her as vapid. We saw her as spoiled. We saw her as entitled, and fundamentally, she was a woman. She was a conventionally attractive white woman. And I'm sure they did 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, that was literally like the fucking draw, right? That was back when this came out. People would say, like, the movie was terrible, but at least you got to watch Paris Hilton die, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Paris Hilton became famous so we could hate her. That was what she was famous for, right? She was famous for us hating her. Well, that was what she was famous for, and she never did anything to deserve that except be rich.
Yeah.
Which we should kind of hate all rich people, but really that's her fault, not hers. Come on.
Well, and very rarely, right? Like, and maybe it says something about our culture that because at the same time we had like Jessica Simpson that like became the same butt of the same jokes, right? And I think culturally we have a tendency to I don't know, to use this kind of vapid female, wealthy, people that we think are maybe undeserved, right, of that, and use them as these kind of punching bags.
Oh, yeah.
And what do we do for dudes? Well, we make movies like American Psycho, which like satirize being wealthy, but not in any kind of way that makes them the butt of jokes.
I mean, there is something, and someone has written we're gonna be actually academic here. Someone has written an actual academic paper, like, about the fact that we do not ever do for men what we do for women all the time with people like Paris Hilton and people like Jessica Simpson, where we create this whole persona around how useless they are, right?
Yeah.
And you know, there is an inherent misogyny in our cultural hatred of Paris Hilton that has nothing to do with her and everything to do with how this country treats women and how our society treats women.
Yeah, especially those that are quote unquote successful, right? Or that we have judged to be undeserved. That being said, I will tell you, her kill pretty fucking brutal.
Oh, it's a really good kill. It's a great kill.
Yeah. So
there's also no bad kill in this movie. Like the kills in this movie are solid.
Yeah. There's not really a throwaway one that I can think of.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe.
Well, I mean, her boyfriend dies off camera.
I don't think he does. Paris Hilton's.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, so like he may not be dead. He may not be dead quite, but you see him, like, you don't see the kill happen, right? You see him with a knife stuck in him or something, right?
Yeah, and then he digs. I tell you, the shit is he digs that knife into like, and you can still see his eyes moving, which is a motif that they use a few times in this. So Leland's on your side. He says, boyfriend. Yeah. And we get just kind of the lingering bit of him, but like that's it. Everything else is good. You know, like,
it's a solid movie. But yeah, she has the best kill. Her kill is great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also just think it's totally fucked to think of like somebody that has so much hot wax on them that they, you know, when you can peel it off, you like peel off their skin. That's fucked.
That whole thing's horrible. Yeah. Like, I'm not sure at what point he actually dies.
Right.
Like, he's still alive way after that. It's very unsettling. He may die in that fire, actually.
Oh God. And I bet he's like, please let me go.
Was that Jared Padalecki? Right? Was that?
Yes. Yeah.
He probably didn't deserve that fate. Poor guy.
Yeah, poor Jared. Oh well, he's made a hell of a career for himself doing something else.
It's rough to be that dude.
I think that would be a good time to talk about it. Jared Padalecki is a big speech and debate guy, and the last nationals before COVID, you know, when we were all there in person, he came to like get the kids pumped up, and like they're like, you know, all the high school kids are like, that's a guy, it's Supernatural, whatever. And I was like backstage, like handing out awards and doing all that shit. And he gave everybody a hug, including me. And motherfucker gives a good hug. All right. Like I kind of like Supernatural anyways, but I was like, yes, please come give me a hug, Jared Padalecki, please. But can we talk for a moment? All right, and I think I have a picture here I could show you. Let me show it up here. What is going on with his facial hair? I have no clue what this is, but it is not working for him in the least bit. I think it exists just to be the kind of wax kind of gimmick that he uses.
I feel like his whole look in this movie, and I don't remember what he looked like at this time. Like I don't remember I don't remember where he was in culture at this moment exactly.
Right.
But like, I feel like his whole look in this movie, and they even pointed out a time or two, is like to make him look very soft, right? Like very, not effeminate, but very like boyish and very like unformed. Like he's in comparison specifically to her brother, right?
Right.
I'm spacing on the actor's name right now, but
Chad Michael Murray.
Yes, like who is the very, you know, he's the very like tough, ripped, you know, masculine, hard jaw, blah blah blah, short buzz cut hair, all that stuff. And I think like it's not an intentional thing to like play them off one another for the audience. It's a thing for them to play off one another in the movie. Like it's a thing that they use against one another to like, because they have a conflict.
Well, and again, I think one of the things I like this movie a lot too. Obviously, people that are listening to the conversation have probably figured that out. But one of the things I appreciate about this movie is it is not a traditional horror film in that the last two are not boyfriend girlfriend with the boyfriend sacrificing himself, right? Like we dispense with his soft ass early on, and we get Chad Michael Murray who kind of who plays this badass in this really unromantic way, you know, like they're just almost equals. So
right. I mean, so like, okay, so my favorite, I mean, not, so my favorite thing about the movie is how it looks like. The look of this movie is my favorite thing. But my favorite, like, non-visual, I guess my favorite, like, narrative element of this movie is that both Elisha Cuthbert, right? Yeah, both Elisha Cuthbert and Chad Montgomery's characters, yes, they're brother and sister, which is great. Like it's a very different dynamic than you normally get in these movies, and I think that's great. But also, both of them, their immediate very first reaction to any kind of danger is to fight. Every time, there is no hesitation at all to them. Like, you know, like the best scene is the best demonstration of this, right, is when she's underneath the filling station, right, and she's got her lips super glued shut.
Yeah.
And the bad guy Bo takes a swing at Chad Montgomery's character with a file. Like, he's got a sharp file, and he's going to stab him. And he tries to stab him, and like there is not even a beat of hesitation between the swing and him just punching him. Chad Montgomery just punches him in the face. Like, I have never seen someone just like haul off and punch a slasher in the face with so little hesitation.
Yeah, but he's not taking shit off anybody. Yeah,
right. You know, and she's the same way. Like, she is the exact same way. Like, they both immediately fight.
Yeah.
When they are pushed, when they are cornered, when they're in any kind of danger, they immediately fight.
Yeah. And the movie is silly and does some silly things, but they are both tough. They both have agency, independent of one another, and like, it makes you think maybe their home life was a little rough. There was something good because they're both survivors, and you believe that fundamentally.
Right. Yeah. And you know, I love it. Like, I love. I mean, there's so many moments in a movie that has lots of silly things, but there's so many moments of them making the right call, right?
Right.
The right, like and not even necessarily right. They're making a call to fight rather than to hide or to run or to hope someone helps them or whatever. Like, they're making the call to fight. Like, when he comes out of the theater and they're just standing there waiting for him to come out of the theater, like, you know, stuff like that. Like, there's so many scenes like that where they're just like, no, we're going to fight. We're not going to like put one bullet in him then run.
Right.
No, we are going to.
We're going to stay there until he's dead.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to beat him in the face with a baseball bat, for example, eventually.
Yeah. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit because to return back to that essential question. Yeah, I know, right? What are we doing? People did not tune in to hear us actually get to the essential question. But the thing that routinely, because I, like you, love wax museums. In fact, there is a wax museum in Hannibal, Missouri, which is like across the state from us. But it is entirely kind of horror scenes, or at least it was last I went a decade ago. But I love it. It's one of my favorite places in the world because you have to walk down the stairs to get to it, and it is just one horror tableau after another, and it's all in wax, which is right. It's
I have to go to that. That sounds awesome.
Right, it's fan-fucking-tastic. Yeah. So I've been obsessed with like movies like Waxworks, which we'll talk about in just a bit later on, but those things are inherently creepy, and I think we could hypothesize a lot of reasons why, but I think Baudrillard's discussion of the simulacrum is really as close as I'm going to get to like why those things are scary. Have you ever heard of the simulacrum or any of that before?
I mean, I've heard of it before, and I kind of skimmed some of the things you dropped in the show notes, but you know, the audience probably hasn't. So go ahead.
Yeah. So the long story short, Baudrillard devotes like chapters and chapters to the idea of which I'm going to like narrow down into a 2-minute kind of explanation here.
Soundbite, yeah.
Yeah, right. But the long story short is the simulacrum is the idea that we have art, right? Or we take a photo, or we paint a picture, or you know, whatever, right? And it very closely resembles something real. Okay. And as that gets further away from the real thing that it represents, or in some ways, if the real thing disappears on its own, then all we're left is this thing that is 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 steps removed from reality. And the more it gets removed from reality, the fucking creepier it gets. Because, as Leland will appreciate here, we start to associate it with the uncanny valley and these things that are just innately creepy, innately scary, you know? And I think a wax museum, particularly a wax museum made out of real human beings, is like the perfect example of the simulacrum, in that we think they represent reality, but they essentially destroy reality by killing the person that, you know, that it covers, and replacing it with this thing that is not quite the real of which it's supposed to represent. And I think we look at those things and we're like, that's fucked up. What do we do with that? You know?
Right. Yeah. So like, and one of the things the movie does, like, there's a number of things in this movie like that it touches on and then doesn't go anywhere with. Like I said earlier, it's not dumb, and it's not dumb, but it's not particularly smart either.
Right.
Like it touches on a lot of themes and then just doesn't do anything with them. But one of the themes it touches on is that, so like, okay, so spoiler alert for the movie that we've spoiled already a number of times. There's actually 2 killers, right? There's not just one. There's Beau and his brother Vincent, I believe.
Vincent, yeah, you got it.
And they were, you know, Siamese twins and blah blah, and they were separated and or conjoined twins. I apologize.
Cindy watched it to watch Parasite. That's okay too.
Many did. Yeah. But anyway, there's a theme that like they just skim over the surface of, which is that Vincent is actually an artist, right? Like he is an actual, like, very talented artist, right? And Beau is the one who is a psychopath or whatever. He's the one who wants to be hurting people. And he has convinced Vincent that he needs these bodies to make his art.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not true. And that's the sort of fundamental, like, interesting crux that it never deals with at all, is that he's lying to him to tell him this, right? Like, Vincent's obviously a very talented artist on his own. He doesn't need to pour wax over corpses to make art, right? He can clearly make it on his own. And that's also an interesting, because again, I said earlier, this is a remake of House of Wax in name only, and that's largely true. But the one thing, the pretty much only thing it shares with House of Wax and House of Wax's forebears that have the same plot is the notion of putting wax over corpses, right? Like that's pretty much the only thing they have in common. And in those movies, that's Cindy just said, yep, 100%. And in those movies, the sculptor had to. In each of those movies, in House of Wax and Mystery of the Wax Museum, the sculptor's hands had been destroyed. He couldn't sculpt anymore. So he made the sculptures by putting wax over corpses. But in this one, Vincent's hands haven't been destroyed. They work just fine. His brother has just manipulated him into believing he can't do something that he actually can do. Which plays into the relationship between Chad Montgomery and Alicia Cuthbert's characters, where he perceives her as putting on airs, and she perceives him as trying to hold her back from accomplishing what she could accomplish. And it plays into that whole thing, and then the movie doesn't do anything with it, but it's definitely there. Like,
you could see that duality, those two sets of siblings, and it could be interesting, and it doesn't, but that's okay, I think
a movie that throws out a bunch of threads and then never ties them together is better than a movie that never throws them out at all. So I'll
agreed. Yeah. Cindy says here, I love Vincent Price in the original. It's so, and it is like he is 100% the Vincent Price that we know and love in that film. You know, he's so good. Yeah.
And
And I went back and watched it to kind of prep for this one just in case. And it was so fun to watch.
It's
yeah.
super good. And if anyone hasn't seen it, the original House of Wax is itself actually a remake of Mystery of the Wax Museum from the 1930s, which is directed by Michael Curtiz, who is it's an amazing film. The original is maybe better than the Vincent Price one, even though it doesn't have Vincent Price, which is a bummer. But the movie is great.
All right. I'll have to go way back for that one.
Yeah, it's so if you have. They came out with a Blu-ray of the Vincent Price House of Wax recently that actually has Mystery of the Wax Museum on it as a bonus feature. So,
great.
So, yeah.
Great. Well, to kind of bookend our conversation here about Baudrillard, there is a great article here, it looks like from Purdue University, that details the different stages of the simulacrum as it's developed over the ages. And at least according to him, the third order is often associated with postmodernity and late stage capitalism, where the simulacrum, right, this representation of reality, precedes the original, and that the distinction between reality and what it's supposed to represent entirely vanishes. So there's only the simulation, and originality lacks any of its meaning. Clearly, that is way deeper than what we're going for here in the Wax Museum. But what I absolutely found so interesting is a discussion of the simulacrum in a discussion of Paris Hilton, how she is this like artificially created celebrity, right?
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
and we are now going full circle that we created this celebrity, you know, that this simulated celebrity, right? And she is now come full circle in that she's a real celebrity, in that she's in this movie, and that she, you know, is essentially the driving press force behind it. You know, like it just seemed super on the nose that in a postmodern world of 2005, they were like, oh yeah, this person that's not real, you know, like let's like she is a wax
museum movie, right?
Yeah. I was like, that's fucking awesome, right? Clearly, Baudrillard would have loved this film.
and like shortly after this, I want to say it was shortly after this, she was also in Repo, right? Repo the Genetic Opera, where she plays essentially Paris Hilton.
Yeah, right.
She's essentially that world's Paris Hilton in that movie, right? She's like this rich heiress who is addicted to plastic surgery,
right?
And wants to become an actual star as opposed to just a celebrity. You know, it's very meta, the character she plays in Repo.
Yeah. Well, in the other thing that really reminded me of the connection between wax museums and the simulacrum, this is a fucking weird reference, okay? And if you don't get it, that's okay. I'm willing to eat this one as just being a weird Tyler thing. But one of my secret guilty favorites is Escape from LA. It is not very good, but it does a lot of really fun and interesting character things. And one of the characters that it introduces is this mad plastic surgeon from like the remnants of Beverly Hills.
But Bruce Campbell.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. But it is so weird because he looks waxen, right? Because he looks fake and artificial, because that's the whole point, is he's had so much, and he's surrounded by all these kind of mutant people that have the same waxy quality about it. And I don't know. I just think that's a super interesting connection to make very specifically to this movie, though.
But before we move on too far, since we're talking about wax figures and about simulacra and everything, and we were previously talking about House of Wax, and I keep saying that this is a remake in name only. What this movie actually is a remake of a movie called Tourist Trap.
Oh yeah,
from 1979, which is essentially the same plot as this movie, except instead of wax figures, they're like mannequins in that one. And also the killer has telekinesis in that one.
Sure.
You know, which is the weirdest fucking thing. But yeah, no, it's but like the plot is basically identical, right? Like, there's a bunch of people that get stranded at this tourist trap. I mean, this tourist destination, by what appears initially to be two brothers, one of whom is good, one of whom is a killer. Only it turns out that you know, there's not that duality that initially appears to be.
Right.
Also, he has telekinesis. What?
Sure. Sure.
You know, and but you get a lot of that like Uncanny Valley simulacrum stuff, because both it is a movie where people are surrounded by mannequins, right? There's shit tons of mannequins. The mannequins come alive because he animates them with his telekinesis that he has, because sure. Yes, yeah, 100% a Full Moon production. It might have actually been Empire Pictures. It might have been before Full Moon, since it was 79. But yes, Charles Band and that whole crew. But he also turns people into mannequins,
right,
in the course of the film, and so it's very like there's something. There's a couple of movies that I really like that do similar things, where there's something that is the reverse somehow of this horror of the wax museum, which is the corpses inside the wax figures, right? They're these perfectly preserved figures inside their rotting. That's one kind of horror. There's another kind of horror that is taking something that's organic and alive and rendering it into something inert.
Right. Yeah.
And there's something about that, like that shows up in Dolls. It shows up in, which we talked about in a previous episode. It shows up in Tourist Trap, right? He's turning people into simulacrums of themselves, essentially, which essentially is what they're doing in House of Wax here too, except that they're dead ones.
Yeah. Well, that discussion of making inert what was organic, right, reminds me of all of the controversy with like the living bodies exhibits, which,
right,
you know, we now know are for the most part like political prisoners that they did not ask permission for, you know, like these things that I think are really biologically fascinating and are interesting, but like come with a shit ton of baggage about why, you know, like maybe not the best thing in the world, you know? So,
and you know, and I mean, and I think it comes into a lot of stuff like how do we get these things? How do we get to this point? And we go back. I mean, like, wax museums have their origins in part in wax anatomical models,
right,
which were designed to replace using corpses, right? Like, we used grave robbers to rob graves to get corpses so that anatomy students could study them. And I mean, there's a whole chain of like,
close association,
questionable ethics, that are all tied up in this. 100%.
So since we're already halfway there, let's go fully into that 4 movies. This is the segment where Orrin's going to give you 2 movies to check out that are pretty similar, and I'm going to give you 2 movies that I think would make either great double features or maybe share the same creative space. And Cindy, I think it is. I am totally on board with your pick here because one of mine is Waxworks. But let's hear your number 2, because your first one was Tourist Trap, right?
First was Tourist Trap, which is again 100% just this movie, only with telekinesis, which this movie could have used. To be fair,
yeah, I mean, of course.
If this
every
movie had telekinesis, it would have been so much better. But
that's mind bullets for people that don't know. Go ahead.
my other one was I actually bounced around on a number of different things because there are so many good Waxwork movies, right? Like you know, I considered like Nightmare in Wax or Wax Mask or something like that. And I actually, like, literally our conversation just now has made me decide that I'm going to go with Anatomy.
Okay.
It's a German film about a serial killer that plasticizes bodies, like in those body revealed exhibits. Like,
okay.
And I think it's got a very, I think it's got a vibe that's very close there.
Very similar. Yeah, I've seen that film. That's it's pretty great though.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Really well done. So obviously I pick Waxworks, and I might add Waxworks 2 is even sillier, but it's totally fun, just like Waxworks 1 is. And my second film I think is a little unorthodox, but I think it really gets to the point of this kind of phase of horror, which is the 2003 remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Jessica Biel and like a whole host of other kind of teen heartthrobs that grew into early 20-somethings. But it's got kind of a gritty element about it. I would say the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake is not nearly as much fun. It's a lot more worried about being mean.
It's a really good example for what you'd watch, and you could see how this movie would have been terrible.
Yeah.
If you were like watching House of Wax and you're like, man, I wish that movie had been terrible. You can just watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, and that's what you get.
Yeah. I just remember, this is a true story. My wife does not like horror movies. Okay. But I think when we were out at the bar in a big group, I had mentioned that I really like scary movies. And, I asked her out on a day and I was like, let's go see a movie. And she was like, well, let's go see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is the one and only time that she has ever recommended that we see a scary movie. And I was like, fuck yeah, I'm down for this. And then halfway through that movie, Leatherface cuts off a guy's leg, I think. And, puts it into a giant vat of salt, not to preserve it, not to do anything, just to fucking be mean, right? And I remember Nicole gasped a little bit, and I was like, oh shit. I was like, that's not good. And then I was like, so sorry that we saw that. Jessica Biel's great, but that movie is not.
What I remember most about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, and it's such a good counterpoint to this movie. You're right. You are 100% right. That they are both very much a product of this moment in time. Mm-hmm. Right, they're very glossy movies, right? They're very shiny looking movies. Even when Texas Chainsaw is very gritty, it's very clearly lit. It's got that sheen that you only got in movies in the early 2000s, right? On it, everything looks very clean, even when it's dirty. But no, everyone in Texas Chainsaw Massacre is allergic to weapons. Every time they get a hold of a weapon, they immediately put it down.
Yeah,
they immediately put it down. At one point, they take a knife out of a guy and put it down. It's
you don't need that. Yeah,
they are constantly setting down weapons. They are so the opposite of the two leads from this movie, who are just I'm going to grab a weapon and fight immediately. No, they are no, ew, weapons, ew.
Yeah. It's fine. Yeah. Whatever. Maybe it's time for me to revisit. I don't know.
I haven't seen it probably since 2003. So I'm being mean to it, but I really don't know, honestly.
So the last thing I'm going to say before we move on, because we are cutting it close on time a bit, I'm going to put a link into this video. And essentially, this YouTube video is what happened to Elisha Cuthbert, right? Because she was this big, and now she can't get a fucking job. And I thought she was great in this film. I mean, maybe not great, but I thought she was good.
She's fine.
There are people that have made a lot more movies than her that are not nearly as good.
Yeah.
So
and she was in 24 at this time too, right?
Right.
Around this time, and it was a big deal, and she was fine in that. I remember.
Yeah, no, I love that shit. And she gave up that gig on 24 to kind of try to make it big in the movies. So I know she is a dedicated listener. She is not. But if she was, then I would say, hey man, we wish you the best. If we're ready to make a wax, House of Wax 2, we hope that you're in it, man. So go for it. Okay. It's time for our final segment of the night, which is anonymous letterbox users leave really shitty reviews of the movies that we love. And I have 3 where I usually have one. Okay.
You were spoiled for choice on this movie.
Oh God.
Oh my God. There are so many movies. So many people hate this movie. So many people are so wrong about this movie.
Honestly speaking, there was a part of me that when I started reading them, I was like, let's just scrap the whole fucking episode and just read letterbox users' reviews of this.
It'd
be great. Okay, so this first one before I read you the first review here, and actually I think I only have two, but whatever. This person gave it a half a star, but a rating of 35 out of 100.
Yeah, these people can't do math.
Right. Not to be nitpicky, but if each star is 20 points, then it should be at least a star and a half, right?
35 is a star and a half. That's a solid star and a half.
Right. But instead it's a half star, and this is what I get. More like scare us, Hilton. Am I right? That's it. That's what the guy said. And then 35 out of 100. So okay.
I do love it. I do love it when people are like more like scare us, Hilton, or whatever, right? Like their whole review is like a weird pun they came up with, and then they go to the painstaking like 35 out of 100. It's really specific, right? Like
right.
I want like 35.75 out of 100. Like what? No, what?
Yeah. What are you doing? No, my favorite reviews were the ones that were like, Paris Hilton is terrible. She was the reason why I watched this movie. But it's like, you got exactly what you wanted, dude. Like, if you're leading with Paris Hilton, good or bad, you're doing exactly what the movie advertisers hoped you do.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, and Paris Hilton's in this movie for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, she was what they sold it with, 100%. But again, she's barely in it.
Yeah. So, I guess Orrin and I are coming across as Paris Hilton apologists today, and I feel very comfortable in that space. Yeah. I didn't know that where that evening was going to take us. I didn't think it was going to take us here, but hey, whatever. I'm going to leave in the show notes, so if you want to check it out, there is a really, really smart anonymous letterbox user that kind of talks about some discussions of like transformative art and existential crises and aesthetic agony that is really great. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but totally read it because it's awesome. And this dude's really smart. But I would like to move on to the bad one if I could.
It's also pretty long, if I remember right. So yeah, move on, please.
Yeah. Oh shoot! The cat knocked down my microphone, but it's okay.
It was telekinesis.
Right? Yeah, fucking tourist trap cat. Okay, so here's the bad one. There's nothing satisfying about this remake. I have seen a single video of Paris Hilton, and it didn't make me hate her all that much. So seeing her die isn't even remotely satisfying to me. Now, I'm going to tell you, I went back and looked at the Internet Movie Database, and at this point, unless you're talking about maybe an episode of a show or something like that.
He's clearly talking about the sex tape.
He's clearly talking about the sex
100%
tape.
The sex tape. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Like, so, there's no question in my mind that that's what they're talking about. Yeah. No question in my mind at all. So
thank you, anonymous letterbox user, for letting us all know you're super into Paris Hilton porn. Which doesn't surprise me in the least bit.
But watching Paris Hilton porn didn't make you want to see her die particularly.
Right. Maybe only a little.
Right, a little bit. You do imply that it made you want her to die a little bit.
Yeah. And Orrin and I are
that's your whole problem on your own, dude. That's
yeah.
You need to talk about that with your therapist.
Yeah, you're right. And we don't want to kink shame anybody, but maybe not that one. That seems not good. For a myriad of reasons. Hey man, as always, this was a super fun show. What do you got? What are we talking about next time?
Okay, next time we're going to talk about a much less fun movie. Oh my God, is it so much less fun?
I can't wait.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Targets. We're
Okay.
going to finally talk about Targets, the movie that gave the title of my second collection. So.
Oh, I love it. All right, cool.
It's legit. It's legit a great film. Like it's actually like a capital I important film. So we're going to talk about like a real film and not me making a real film out of a movie with a house made of wax in it.
Hey, that's cool. I'm down. All right. Okay. All right. And this was a ton of fun though. So excellent pick. Orrin, where can they find more of you out on the internet?
As always, I am Orrin Gray at every place: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Letterboxd, where you could read my bad Letterboxd reviews. All those places.
Love it. Well, I tell you what, if you're a regular listener of the podcast or you check in for our live shows, hey man, recommend us to some other people. We have had a blast interacting with the comments that we see here, during the live episode. I think it makes the episodes better. So like, share us with other people. We would absolutely love that. If you want to hear me talk more about the politics of horror or teaching or whatever, you can follow me at Ty Unsel. Otherwise, if you have an idea for an article you think that would be really interesting for us to read, hell, if you're a writer and you want to publish some with Signal Horizon, I would totally love to hear your pitches. You can send me any kind of email and I'll be happy to get right back to you, to tyler@signalhorizon.com. So until we hear from one of you sending me an email, then I think it's probably time. We'll see you next time on the Horror Pod Class. Class dismissed.